Hey guys, Ryan here with the rest of the Steam GM panel, Game Master panel. This is Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds, and today we're going to be discussing character creation, kind of a sort of from character concept to crunch sort of approach. So who wants to take it off here?
All right, I'll start a little bit. Dave here, one of your game masters for this evening or afternoon or whenever you happen to be seeing this. So now, I feel like this isn't something that's come up a lot at our table, is the build, right? I know some of our players do it, but not a lot of us have done it. Personally, I generally run the game more than I play the game. So it's not really something I've thought about. And I've never thought of it before 3rd edition. My very first 3rd edition character that I actually got to play, I did like a little bit of character building, and I think it was going to take me up to like 4th level to get where I wanted to go. So
a very long-sighted goal indeed with our group. To tell the truth. Yeah. Sometimes, gamer ADD as we've called it.
Yeah, well, it's been quite prevalent at our table. I've heard about these groups that play the same game for 20 years.
Right.
But, it's kind of like a mythical creature.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, really, we need to find the guy that always wants to GM all the time. That's really what it comes down to.
It's all about
the guy who wants to run a table until everybody's level 20, which is, what is that, like 5 sessions a level, give or take? So somebody who's willing to run 100 continuous sessions, more or less.
No problem. It's like 2 years.
There you go. We need to find an indentured servant somehow, trick someone into this task. All right, but let's get back on task here. We're talking about
character builds.
Now, you mentioned something that it kind of started with 3rd edition, and I do remember when you mentioned that. I remember I did build a 2nd edition psionic that wanted to just Dark Phoenix everything to bits. So pretty much disintegration as soon as possible, but now you can't do that kind of stuff. It's all leveled, appropriate. You don't get disintegration before the mages. So you can't. 2nd edition was really out of control, really, with a power base of psionics anyway.
And craziness with multi-classing.
Yes, multi-classing with other things was also beneficial. At high levels, you could pretty much do whatever. So, but yeah, at early 2nd edition, for those 2nd editioners that out there, if you use psionics, I'll do a character build for that, for showing you how to get disintegration and use it as soon as possible, as good as you can.
Oh snap! Nate though was going old school with 2nd edition.
Well,
no one saw that one coming out of left field.
Yeah.
Nice.
I won't even remember how to do anything for 2nd, to be honest.
Well, there might be some errors. I haven't played 2nd edition in a while, but I remember liking destroying everything in my path.
Yeah.
Well, for character
maybe
builds,
he just loves Thaco.
Yeah.
Well, for character builds, I never really looked at, what do I need feat progression-wise, unless I saw, like, hey, this one particular feat is really cool for my character. I want to work up to it. So, like, for me, it was, the only time I really went through a build process was when I was starting off at an epic level character. But for me, that was not, it wasn't a build per se, because I wasn't like, oh, I need to save up for this and I need to work towards that. It was just make a 21st level guy. So it's like, all right, well, I'm a 2-handed sword fighter.
Well, I would
take
actually like to interject. You're wrong. It is exactly that. The only difference is you got to work backwards.
Right.
You got to work from the end result and go, what do I need to get there? Instead of, I guess what we're really talking about is taking a 1st level character and going, what do I need to get there all the way
get
to
level
mythic?
20 or whatever, yeah, or 20 and beyond, basically, yeah. So, I mean, and, like, really, like, if you're trying to go super broken build, that's typically actually going to involve multiple classes. Like, you figure out what you can eke out of each one of those optimally. And then there's the less sort of munchkin-y, just like, I want to build a guy who's really effective at shield bashing. Well, there's the whole progression where you basically, you're being able to strike with your shield and defend with it in the same round. You're knocking dudes back. You also get your full armor bonus to attack as well with your shield. So basically, you're just like constantly like / bull rush. Then everybody in the party that happens to be within reach can just like gank the guy to like the nth degree. Like, I mean, yeah, it's a build. Every single feat is pretty much decided for you if you're going the absolute optimum you could go. And on top of that, you pretty much have to be a human to do it. So
since we're talking about builds, this might be a little bit off topic, but Do you guys remember from 3rd edition Mongoose Publishing? It was, they
yeah.
were one of the better third parties. Well, they
Right.
put out a prestige class, and I think it had Superior Cleave, right? So, which came after Great Cleave, which was insane as it was. And then, like, when you topped off the prestige class, you got to Killing Machine. It was like unlimited cleave forever.
That's
Now that's some character building right there.
Right.
That's like scenes out of an anime or something.
That's the one that you can get a 5-foot step in between each attack. So if you had 17 miles worth of guys lined up, you could kill them all in 6 seconds.
Well, you know,
as long as you continue to hit and kill.
well, you know, actually, I think there's a thing with the samurai that can basically do that. Like, they can pretty much hit, kill, hit, kill, hit, kill. They can loop around the earth by doing this.
They ran out of movement
If they-
1 second ago.
Yeah, like, as long as there's dudes for them to slay, they can actually travel around the earth, you know, so it gets a little ridiculous. Just a little.
So we need Guinness World Record and Orc Babies, and we can just get this thing going on.
So obviously, you know, like that's
Broken?
That's
A little broken?
that's absolutely broken, and it falls, you know, far more into the, you know, power gaming
Well-
scenario, and here we're talking about builds. So for our players out there who don't, you know, realize or understand the difference, what do you as a
new
game
players
master,
don't do that. Your
Yeah,
GM will
right,
hate you.
what do you see as the difference
Well,
between those terms?
Let's talk about, like, so when we're talking about character creation, which character creation is very broad. For me, I feel like there's the characters you create when you want to create them for, you know, role playing basically. There's the ones that you want them to be good at what they do, so they are optimized. And then there's characters that are just like munchkin to fuck. Like, you know, just like you find every single loophole and every single feat, you know, you possibly can, and things like that. So, like, you know, I'm working on I mean, it's suboptimal in the fact that I wanted to build a crazy, like, knife-throwing halfling that was like a Gatling gun with daggers, right?
Okay.
There is a feat that, it's called, improved weapon feint, or 2-weapon feint.
Okay.
So, what this feat lets you do is, you know, like, you forego your first attack to basically feint, so this way that they're flat-footed, and he's a rogue, so basically he can throw, once doing that, he can throw 5 daggers at weapon damage plus, like, 6d8 because he's a knife master.
Right.
So, I mean, it's just, so, not only that, I built him for 15th level. He's got a rogue talent, advanced rogue talent called Crippling Strike, which every time he hits with a sneak attack, it does 2 points of strength damage.
Oh, Jesus.
So, but the only thing, getting back to the improved 2-weapon feint, so there's just weapon feint, which you would think would be a prerequisite for improved weapon feint, but it isn't. So basically, I optimized all 14 of my feats because at some point we're going to be launching a little project called the RPG Fight Club, which is just to have you build your most ridiculous builds that you possibly can. We fight them, and we call them down the middle and see what happens in the end. Like, so if you want to get your power gaming on, this is a way to let off steam and do that. But, like, you know, your GM might really appreciate it when you actually build a character you want to role play, right?
Okay.
So yeah, so we talked about the...
So what
few
you're
different
saying
approaches.
is, you know, power gaming is to make the most combat disgusting character,
Right.
whereas character build is more about planning a character
That does some things
to
well.
achieve something
Right.
optimal.
Right.
So it's like, all right, you know, if you decide, you look through the list of feats and you're like, well, this is a really neat idea. How do I work back to be able to get that?
Right.
Well, I guess too, like, you could take it with anything. Like, combat is just, I mean, it's kind of like the ultimate expression of success.
Well, it's intrinsic. Like, I don't really want to play an RPG that doesn't have combat scenes. Like, honestly, I know there are people that will play sessions, and, like, I could do one session, but if I go multiple sessions and there's no combat, like, I just get restless.
I
Man.
kind of disagree. I think you need conflict. I don't know that you need combat. You know, they're not necessarily the same.
Come on, how many sessions can you go before you don't get to, like, slay something, you know?
I can outwit them.
Well, it depends on the character.
I'll think aggressively at
See,
them.
I would say, you know, like my tabletop gaming has evolved, and you know, you guys have all you were all there for my bloodthirsty session, you know, where I misinterpreted the DM's words and my character died, you know, but
Huh, some of us were even running that game.
Some of us were.
I don't know who would have done that.
But like I said, that was I fully accept that that was my actions and whatever.
Wait, what level were you? Like third?
Oh no, that was first level.
And it was a stone giant. Am I correct?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
A giant crashing through the forest.
As Nick Fury put it to Loki, foot, boo, or ant, boo. Yeah,
it was more like foot, chest into tree.
Yeah,
but
soccer ball says he was Pele. He was Pele for a
So
little bit.
we're all about educating people here on our Game Master discussion panels. If you're a first level character and you see a giant, don't
attack it.
Yeah,
Just
it's probably
don't
not.
attack.
It's probably
You might
there
wanna
for you to run. It's either going to be a role playing encounter, or you should just
or
run.
running
Encounter. Yeah.
But back to builds, right? So you can make like the ultimate linguistic, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
That would be a build. In theory, like you want to be
Yeah.
able to speak to anything and everyone. Well, I guess you could just be a mage and take that spell.
I think there's actually a gnome archetype or whatever that's really good at that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pathfinder now has that as a skill, and every time you rank up, you get another language.
I think there's actually a thing where every rank you put, there's an archetype somewhere. It's like every rank you put in linguistics, you get 2 languages out of it. So
But, I mean, that's just an example. Or maybe you want to build the master crafter mage, dwarven mage, where your thing is all about building items.
So there's a way to do that that's so, like, you save yourself so much gold and can do it so fast. Like, myself and an acquaintance who's kind of an uber munchkiner, like, I don't really appreciate the way he, to the level he does it. Well, I mean, like, when you're, like, willing, it was a point buy, but when you're willing to give your characters, like, a 7 strength, and, like, so he's, like, crippled and deformed, like, he's got, like, a 7 strength and, like, a 5 charisma, but he's able to bang out items, like, pretty much in 4 hours, like, it's just, like, the Quasimodo.
He's a Chinese child sweatshop, and all rolled on one.
Yeah, it's just, like, it's to the extreme where you're willing to make, like, the Elephant Man, who happens to also be really good at...
Dude, wasn't that a Norse god? Isn't he the one that made like Majorlin?
Oh yeah. I mean,
Majorlin and all the other weapons.
There's mythical precedence for it. Yeah.
Okay, yes. It's been around, but I don't think his intentions were all that pure. So
he was whoring out the point buy system.
Well,
to get
no,
as high as possible.
This is also the guy that his second level of ninja had. He assumed that he was able to take a 10th level rogue power, because it says you can also take rogue powers, and obviously the advanced ones have to be up for grabs, right? Because it said you can take, hide in plain sight, which means you can basically go invisible while people watch you.
Right.
So, I mean, that's somebody who, like, flies in the face, like, of logic, like, just strictly looking for loopholes, like, that's straight
that's power
gaming to
that's
the...
straying away from the actual role-playing game.
Right.
And going into...
Steve Jackson made a game for those guys.
Yeah. Right, it's true. I mean, it's a place to start, but, like, if somebody's been doing it, been in the hobby for a little while and they haven't progressed past that, I mean, I guess, everybody enjoys what they enjoy, but it's not my game. So, not what I want to play.
So I would say for the new players out there that are watching this, take a little forethought when you create your character. What does he look like at a 1st level, 5th level, 10th level? Because I've also been the guy to make character and take feats because it seemed like a good idea at the time. And then you get to another point and you're like, oh, I want to do this thing, and I can't because I did that thing.
I mean, there is an option to retrain stuff, but it's a ton of gold to do it. Like, basically, you find a master, like, almost like back to 2nd edition days, where you had somebody train you. But, so the retrain, like, you can retrain just about anything, but there's a gold modifier of how much that's going to cost you. So, you can retrain it at the low price of, like, 50,000
$1 million gold!
Well, 50,000 gold or something like that, which that's like a pretty sweet magic item. Like, that's...
Or a castle.
Well, the other thing that kind of really makes sense with the whole character build is a character is not... Well, I've achieved this level of success, and it has unlocked magical powers for me. The whole progress of an adventurer is typically that they are training through combat and through study and through adventure as to what they're actually doing. So technically, you do want to know what you want to do, because that's what your character should be working on.
Yeah, every
You
character
know,
has goals and
you know,
dreams
there's
and what
DMs
they're
out
going to
there
be.
who are real sticklers for it and say, okay, you know, well, your first level character, you know, this is what you're doing. What is your plans for second, so that you're technically training that level to get there. So that if you say, okay, well, you know, I'm a strict DM and you know, my player's a fighter and he wants his next level as a mage. Well, if he doesn't have a mage teaching him, how is he going to take that level?
Or
of
he
mage?
hasn't done anything. He hasn't like found the captured spell book of
Right.
a rival caster or something.
You know, so without any of that, you know, forethought, you're having that, you know, almost mystical transition from level to level, as you know, like a video game, just boom.
Well, I mean,
the
the
lights
thing,
appear.
right. The thing of it is, though, like, you know, mage characters start the game age-wise, they start later. Like, they're an older character on the table, whereas, like, a fighter can be, like, you know, 15, 16 years old. So this person, the mage, the first little wizard, you know, you pretty much say he's probably been training for about a decade.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, this fighter, in the span of about 2 weeks, has become a wizard. Like, you know, that's like kind of flies in the face of, like, you know, genre tropes and logic. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you'd have to have some kind of transition.
Some sort of build, like,
or start off with their background being that
they've
had some mage training, but they're not there yet.
Well,
so their second level could be.
Then you get into the whole, you know, problem, because I mean, you know, I don't know how it looks in Pathfinder, but in 3.5 you had the whole apprentice level. You were technically zero in 2 different classes.
Well, then you could just do that.
Or you could do that. Well, you could do that, but you don't have to.
But by doing that, you know, you get like 45% of both. So you're not fully getting, you know, this, not fully getting that.
It's some of this stuff can happen like off camera. Like, you know,
Right.
you're saying you're working on this. So what if my actual level is in fighter and we know eventually,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like,
and I agree with that. But I mean, there's some DMs out there that are real sticklers.
well,
for
fuck that.
That's his
if
opinion.
Your DM's not treating you well, come hang out with us.
Exactly. Find a good, I don't know, play-by-post game or something. No, that sucks. Like, you know, fuck, it's a game. Let players kind of do what they want as long as they say yes. Right? Back to the say yes.
it is more fun to say yes.
Yeah.
But in my world,
Exactly. Your horse has to be black because there are no red horses in this region. Damn it! All right. Yeah.
so character builds. What's your number one tip? Especially for the new player that's just getting started.
Well, I mean, it depends. Like, you know, if you're a more interested in role playing, what I like to do is find some sort of example of the archetype that you'd like to play. Like, you know, maybe it's an influence from like a book or a movie or whatever. You know, I don't know. Maybe you want to be Drit Stewart, and although there's been too many, your GM will just roll his eyes when you show up with that character.
He'll want to hit you with a scimitar.
Right. He will probably bludgeon you. But maybe you want to be somebody that's like Tyrion Lannister or Jaime.
Or
you know,
Conan.
Or Conan. I have a character concept that I'll probably do a follow-up video with that's kind of loosely based off of Antonio Banderas from 13th Warrior. You know, like that sort of Arabian, you know, sort of finesse fight.
I thought you were going Puss in Boots.
Oh yeah, Puss in Boots. That's right. I would offend you. Although that could be fun too. You know, I'm basically Puss in Boots is essentially Errol Flynn. I mean, so yeah, there's that. I don't know. Anybody else want to talk about some?
So what would you say is your number one build tip?
Number one, because we can kind of get carried away with character building, I would say that the number one tip would be start with a concept and then think about your character. Well, does he want to suck at life or does he want to succeed and do well in life? So
suck at life, first level commoner.
Yeah. So what does he want to do? Like, so let's say we take a guy that's a battle mage, for example. That's one of the character builds I'm going to be working on too. So he's a wizard and a fighter, or a sorcerer and a fighter, and he uses different things to augment his strength and his combat ability. But he's got the fighting capacity. So he's got to have a background that kind of melts those two together. Even if he starts at first level, he's got to have some kind of background that makes sense for that build. Otherwise, you're just kind of saying, well, I'm sticking this thing that's on a piece of paper, and I'm going to roll some dice.
And that's a great idea, Nate. But before any of you guys out there start putting it in the comments, we know because some of us have played Pathfinder. There's a what's it called, a Magus?
Magus. Yeah, there's the Magus too.
There's the Magus. So Nate hasn't played as much Pathfinder.
I haven't played Pathfinder really.
So keep. Well, you can put your comment down there anyway. We don't care. but he's telling you he would do it. So don't worry about
I mean,
it.
but maybe stylistically, like, you know, Magus isn't as versatile as as the wizard. Yeah. The sorcerer is more of a flavor sort of thing. And you know, like, maybe for a background thing, maybe he was the bodyguard of the wizard that was picking up a little bit here and there by always being around him. I don't know. You know, like,
or he's a fighter with demon blood or whatever.
Well,
whatever the
sorcerer
spin is.
The sorcerer thing, yeah, exactly. Whatever bloodline you have, that's pretty easy to explain away too. You know, so yeah. What about you as far as build ideas?
You know, when I build a character, like, I generally look at it from the role-playing stance. Even if it's a combat character, like, I try and figure out what is this character's purpose, what is he trying to do, and where does he want to go. I don't really look that far ahead. I recently just started playing Pathfinder, so I'm probably going to get more into that. Like I said, I usually run the game, so I have less experience as a player and more experience as a game master.
Yeah, and the campaign we've been doing, is ongoing, is for Dark Sun, so everything's a little screwed up anyway. Like, it's not like your typical Tolkien-esque high fantasy. So,
yeah. Well, but in that campaign, right? It's Dark Sun. So in Dark Sun, here's the deal with Dark Sun. Everything wants to fucking kill you, including the plants.
Right.
Right. And there's not that many plants. So my concept build for that character was I need to either run towards battle really fast or run away from it really fast.
Right.
And everything I've done is basically has been movement enhanced combat. I'm playing a soul knife barbarian.
Yeah, also the soul knife nicely helps you get around the fact that all the weapons are made out of stone.
Suck.
Bone.
They're made out of suck.
Yeah, basically they're stone or bone. So there's penalties.
So they're going to break, or they're
basically
offer negatives.
Soul knife is a cheat
Yeah.
to not have to have manufactured weapons.
Yeah, I played that card game too.
Yeah.
From Steve Jackson.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But no, like, that particular build really though is about mobility,
Right.
and my traits, my psychic powers, my feats. They're all geared around that. It's the survivability of the character in a harsh place where you either need to get somewhere as fast or away from somewhere as fast. And that's what I went with.
Well, yeah. And sometimes water is hard to come by, too, because it's a desert planet. So being able to run to the next oasis is a nice thing to be able to do, right? Mm-hmm. So, yeah. What about you? What do you want to pick up?
I would say that, especially with Pathfinder and there being so many overlapping classes, that you gotta investigate all your options. I played the play-by-post, and I was looking to augment my survivability and fighting powers of my rogue with a level of fighter. And the GM says, well, why don't you pick Ranger, and you could, choose between your mounted stuff or the two weapon fighting. It'll give you the armor proficiencies, you'll get all of this stuff. And at first I was like, no, Ranger doesn't fit this guy at all. And the more I looked into it,
Urban Ranger it is.
Ranger fit much better, and I'm like, wow. So you really got to look at, all your options. You don't want to just dismiss something right out because Rogue's got to overlap with Ninja and with Bard. Fighter has got,
basically
Paladin, Ranger. And there's derivations off of every particular core class.
The archetypes
that you can work off of, and something might not only work better, but offer things that you hadn't even thought of.
Well, in that same game, I'm actually doing I guess I did do a build. See, I do builds, and it's more intuitive than planned out. Like, I had a concept, and I went with it. And, after talking to the game master in that one, essentially my concept was I wanted to make a tainted, weird character. So I went with Sorcerer. And then, it was pointed out that there's actually the Oracle, which is kind of like the divine version of Sorcerer, that tap in the forces. So, then I started reworking the character, and my build is actually weird powers that are kind of taking over his mind. And then, there's game effects that happen to come into play because of that. And all of my choices are based around that. So, I guess that's another way to plan a build or do a build.
Right. Well, I mean,
You want to talk to your game master and see whether he has any suggestions or feedback to make your character more thematic to what you're actually playing.
well, see, what I would say, I want to point out that, like, the difference between your power choices with your sorcerer, like the power gamer sorcerer build or the typical sorcerer build, you're basically taking all offensive powers. You're taking magic missile or acid arrow or whatever as soon as you can take them. Like, or I mean, also the most efficient spells at low levels are like color spray or sleep or whatever. Like, and I mean, for a creepy, weird sort of character, like, sleep absolutely works, but, like, you want to keep your powers thematic, as opposed to, like, oh, this thing's just going to kick ass, I'm going to have this and this. Like, if you don't really think of the character concept, you just have this weird sort of hodgepodge of abilities that nothing really fits, Like, you end up with, what is that one Marvel character, the Mimic or whatever, where he just copies other people's abilities, and he just like, looks weird, and, like,
He looks like all the X-Men at once.
Like, you wouldn't want to follow a comic book about that guy all the time. They come in as a villain every once in a while, but who the hell cares about that Mimic? He's just a nemesis. He's just a faceless thing to fight, like, really. So, just a little tangent.
Okay. So, make it all mesh together and work. I think that's what I can take away from that.
Keep a theme, just, I don't know, like, it just, like, you look at somebody's sheet and you're just like, what are you doing here? It's just all over,
Well, I mean, there's sometimes people sit there and they when they level up, they're not planning their character. They're just saying, okay, well, I'm going to put some skill points here. I'm going to put this feat here because it's the flavor of the day, or it looked appealing. And then by the time you get to 10, 15, 20th level, you've got a character that's not specialized in any way, shape, or form. They've got every single skill that they can possibly learn. They're not a master at any of them, and they wind up, being a mediocre character, or they're just, relying on the magic items that their, gracious DM gave them just so they can compete with the rest of the party or keep up with the rest of the party.
Well, I mean, that's the thing to look at, too, like, in character creation, like, it's a Joss Whedon movie, or a show. It's an ensemble cast, right? Like, everyone cannot be the master of everything, because you're not... Basically, if you try to master everything, you create a subpar character at everything.
Nothing.
You kind of suck at everything. You can do it all, but you kind of suck. Like...
If you want to do it all, take the feat or trait jack of all trades and move on. You'll be horrible at everything, but at least you can do it.
Actually, my favorite feat, because I used it in Nigel's game, for elves, gnomes, and dwarves, breadth of experience, you have to be over 100 years old. Your character has to be over 100 years old to take it. But for a dwarf, that's they still have like another 30 years of adventuring in them before they're even middle aged. Like, so I mean, how many campaigns progress through that? So, but anyway, it like gives you a +2 bump on absolutely all knowledge skills. When you think about that, that's a net of +20, like to skills, because the knowledge is encompass 10 different abilities, or skill sets.
Really helpful in the beginning.
Oh yeah.
Really
So your tip of how to hoard if you're an old character.
Right, exactly. Yeah, humans can take over 100, but then like you're 100-year-old human.
Unless you're Elminster, it's not working.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a badass feat.
So, do we got anything else, or we want to wrap this up? Character builds.
I guess
tips for players.
We can nerd out.
We can nerd out on that one.
Yeah. All right. So this has been Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds. If you're enjoying what we're doing, these conversations, please like, comment, or subscribe. Right. Well, until next time, nerd out, fellas or ladies.